The Observing Infinite Life Sutra discuss about 3 types of virtues, or 3 requirements in cultivation. The second virtue is to receive and to maintain the refuge, and to obtain and preserve all precepts, and not violating any one of them in daily behavior. So, not just receive, taking the ceremony, but also maintain at any time, at any place, the essence of the triple gems, which is enlightenment, proper viewpoint, and purity of the mind. These 3 things are the standard of cultivation. And to approach to the standard, the methods are numerous. We also know there are many schools and many methods. They are pretty much categorized into 3 aspects. As long as you can actually enter through one main gate, one of the 3 main gates, the final result is the same. For Pure Land students who practice Buddha name chanting, it is to enter the ultimate self-nature through the door of purity, because the Pure Land school students is seeking for, or at least the goal is to be able to reach a single state without confusion or scattering. And that is an evidence that the Pure Land school student practice and enter into the self-nature through the gate of purity. The second item of the second virtue talks about possess numerous precepts. And the last item of the second virtue talks about be able to maintain a proper behavior and manners. To be able to possess all numerous types of precepts. The precepts are have many types, many kinds. But the most important, or the essence, are the fundamental 5 precepts. The next one, or the third item of the second virtue, talks about not violating the proper manners in behavior. And for that one, we take a look of the Bhikkhu 250 precepts. It contains the first 4 most serious and ultimately important precepts, plus 13 important precepts, and the rest precepts deal with proper manners, rules, and regulations about behavior. So, to practice Buddha Dharma, take refuge and understand its meaning. Observe or follow the precepts, particularly the fundamental ones, are most important. My teacher used to explain to me, like traveling from northern part of Taiwan, capital city called Taipei, to the center of Taiwan, city called Taichung, we take railroad train. You must keep your ticket from the beginning stop to the last destination. In our spiritual development, similar to this situation, we must not forget the 3 refuge and the 5 fundamental precepts. The five basic precepts, which are no killing, no stealing, no committing sexual misconduct, no lying, number 4, and the last one, no drinking of intoxicants things to lose sober mind. This first 4, no killing, no stealing, and no lying, and no committing sexual misconduct, are universal. Whether you take this precept or not, if you break them, you just naturally have the natural sin. You create a sin automatically. The last one, not taking intoxicants such as liquid. When you violate this one, only when you take this precept, and then you drink wine or liquor, then you violate this one. But if you don't take that one, drinking liquors, you don't create a sin because it is precautionary. It is not a fundamental violation of the universal law of karma. So we need to understand the meaning of the precepts and the purpose of all the fundamental precepts. And there are reasons behind this. What time you can follow the precepts without violation? What time you can do things opposite to the precept tells you and still follow the spirit, the meaning of the precept, without violation. So we need to study the precepts, its purpose, and its true meaning or spirit behind it. Without this proper understanding, a lot of people may feel Buddhism, their philosophy and sutra are beautiful, but precepts seems too much. It's too burdensome, too troublesome. I think I just want to be exposed to the sutra and not the precepts observation. This is because of an improper understanding. Because the precepts is Buddha's behavior and manners. It is just like Li, or the proper manners of Confucianism, of Confucius. Without the precepts, there will be no Buddha. Without the proper manner, there will be no Confucianism. Buddha's teaching are so vivid, so lively, and so flexible. And the purpose is to benefit the sentient beings. It is not creating a bondage to give sentient beings inconveniences. So we must first understand the motivation of Buddha in helping all sentient beings. There are many teachers nowadays who can teach sutras, Buddha's teachings, but there are almost none who provide teachings on precepts. Because when discussed precepts, item by item, and the consequence of violating each individual precept, oftentimes end up in hell, then people become scared and they do not like to hear this. And perhaps because there will be no audience, so there are no teacher willing to spend time and teach precepts. But we know the motivation of a Buddha is to benefit sentient beings. We know precept is essential and most important to Buddha Dharma. So we need to see why the precepts is necessary and why precepts really do not create bondage or inconveniences to your daily life. I'd like to share with you a personal experience about precept observation. When my teacher, when he was alive, most venerable Mr. Li, being none, he lived in Taichung, Taiwan, the center part of Taiwan Island. He followed the precepts very rigorously. Only one meal a day before noontime. No breakfast, no supper. I follow the similar precept, but I do take breakfast and lunch before noon, no suppers. But one day, disciple invited him, my teacher, Mr. Lee, the most venerable one, for supper. He invited me to go along with him. I feel very uncomfortable because I follow the precept of no eating supper. Now my teacher wants me to go along with him. The teacher then told me, the attitude you are taken of not joining other people's happiness by accepting their offering is the attitude of Theravada Buddhists. To be a Mahayana Buddhist or Bodhisattva, you need to make sentient beings happy. Therefore, from that point of view or for that reason, you accept their food offering and you take supper, which is not violating of the precept, but to create a happiness of the person who would like to offer you. On the other hand, if you do follow your precepts, then you have created an image or impression that the Buddhists are unreasonable. They are hard to deal with. And once you become a Buddhist, sincerely, you take precepts, then your life totally different than average people. Then they perhaps going to say better words behind you, and they definitely do not want to become a Buddhist. Therefore, come with me to accept the food offering. Therefore, we know the precepts are very flexible. Follow the spirits. Sometimes you eat supper. When there's no situation that you need to eat supper, then follow the original precept literally. However, if you do like to enjoy supper and you pass the word around and suggest your friends, disciple, please invite me for supper, then you are violating the precept because you create opportunity for yourself to eat supper. So if people do not know you follow this precept, they invite you and you come, and then they realize you almost break the precept for the sake of making them happy. They will be very touched, and they think Buddhists are very flexible, very compassionate. So we need to know the meaning of the precepts, and when it's truly violating the precept, when it is not a violation. During the war during the invasion of Japanese against China in about the 1940s, there are 3 persons escaped from Japanese persecution. They were saved by an old monk. When the war was over, these 3 persons are grateful to the monk who saved their lives. So they invite the monk for a banquet, and they have prepared the best of food, chicken, beef, and all kinds. And then the monk came. Then they realized monks are vegetarians, but we already prepared the banquet of all kinds of chickens and meat. Surprisingly, the monk just ate all things that was prepared for him without any complaint. This made these 3 persons very touched. On the other hand, if the monk came and shows ugly face or something, then these 3 persons not going to have any good impression about the Buddha Dharma. So Buddhism is very flexible. There's a common statement saying, compassion is the essence. Experience or skillful means are just the gates in order to accommodate people or welcome people. And also in Sutra, there's another statement said, Bodhisattvas are those who want to make all sentient beings happy. And this is the spirit of practicing Bodhisattva methods, which may look drastically different from the Theravada Buddhism's precepts and practices. To seriously observe precepts actually covers one should obey the law made by the country and made by all nations. If you went to all nations, and all events need to satisfy local standard about morals. If you come to China, then you need to observe the local law of China. If you visit the United States, you need to follow the law of the United States. So the precepts means regulations in daily life. In today's world, traffic and transportation are so convenient. So we need to do in room as the Romans do. And then you can be considered truly practice the observation of truly observe the precepts. The original precepts are made by Buddha in ancient India. Today, if you follow the words of the precepts, it may not be suitable. For example, for the monks' precepts, they are about over 10 items, dealing with how to dress the robe. But the clothes of ancient people, particularly of India, is different from today and the Chinese people. Then if you just follow the precept to the word, then it becomes inconvenient or sometimes improper. However, we need to know the reason and the spirit behind each and individual precept. What is the spirit and the reason behind the precept? It can be boiled down to two statements. To avoid all evils and to observe and practice all good deeds. To avoid all evils is the self-regulation of Theravada Buddhism. That we should always follow, no matter that we are with other people or alone by ourselves. We always follow that. But when deal with sentient beings, then we need to do all good deeds, which is the spirit of the basic reasoning for Mahayana Buddhism. Now, what is good, what is evil? Then that pretty much decided by the precepts. Those in agreement with the spirit of the precept is good. Those violate the spirit of the precept is evil or violation. And due to the differences of Chinese people's mentality versus Indian mentality, the culture and traditions are also different. Therefore, there is a Zen master called Bai Zhang. He has set up, or you may say modified the precepts and made new rules and regulations, and yet still follow the spirit of the precepts. Follow the principle, but may change the item, which may be different than original precepts. So, a true Buddha Dharma, and particularly the essence of Buddha Dharma, the precepts, need to be modernized, need to be localized, and not lose the universal spirit that was originally made by Buddha. To follow the precepts and follow the rules and regulations, therefore the mind will be in peace and do not have guilty feeling. On the other hand, if we violate the precepts and do not follow rules and regulations, even though you may be able to escape from punishment, but your mind will not be at peace. When mind is not at peace, then one cannot practice meditation, and therefore one cannot enter into samadhi. That's why we always say the practice procedures are observing the precepts, enter into samadhi, and generate wisdom of prajna. The second virtue we mentioned deals with the practicing content of the Mahayana or Theravada Buddhism. And then we're going to talk about the third virtue, the content of the third virtue are associated with the Mahayana Buddhist practice. And the Mahayana Buddhism has to be established upon or based upon the Theravada Buddhism's content. And the first statement in the third virtue stated, one need to arouse or generate Bodhisattva mind. We always heard people say, please generate the Bodhisattva mind and do this and do that, but not many people truly understand what is a Bodhisattva mind. Buddhi means real and fully realize. That is the Buddhi mind. Realize what? Realize for human beings there are 8 types of sufferings. If I'm going to discuss the details, we are not going to have time. It takes more than 2 hours. So we can basically say the 3 types of sufferings are all possessed, contained in the human realm, which is suffering. Second one is deteriorating suffering, the suffering due to deterioration. The third one is suffering due to non-stop or constant change. So it can boil down to 3 types of suffering. For the realm of form, which is in heavenly level, very high, they do not have suffering. They do, however, still have suffering of deterioration and suffering of constant change. They do not have suffering is because they are in a highly spiritual level. So they have already overcome the 5 types of desire, which is fame, wealth, sex, fame, food, and sleep. And therefore they do not have the major suffering, but they still have 2 other types of suffering, which is the deteriorating suffering and constant changing suffering. Then comes to the highest heavenly being in the realm of formlessness. In this realm, these sentient beings appear in the form of conscious mind, no body. Without the body, there will be no deterioration. Therefore, the suffering is gone, and the deterioration suffering is disappeared, also gone. But they still have constant changing suffering, which means they want to enjoy the peace, but that peace cannot be forever. It still eventually changed out. They cannot stop the suffering or the constant changing, and eventually going to return to the suffering. So they are suffering. If one realizes, no matter how high in this heavenly level, still you are not totally away from suffering. With this realization, and you generate strong determination to away from suffering and to be in peace forever. That is the beginning of Bodhisattva mind. And of course, Bodhisattva mind has other content in saving others. We're going to discuss later. The Arahant and single and another Bodhisattva are a great enlightened being called a solitary enlightened being. Those 2 sage or holy people, they do not have the true Bodhisattva mind. Bodhisattva do have Bodhisattva mind. They want to save themselves. They want to save all relatives and friends, even enemies. They want to save all beings with a mind of equanimity without discrimination. The Theravada Buddhists, now the tradition of Theravada Buddhism is to, and particularly those who reach the sagehood, however, they do save beings, only those they think they are karmically connected to them or they like them. But they will not volunteer to come out and save others, as the Bodhisattvas of the Mahayana Buddhism would do. Therefore, oftentimes it said the Bodhisattvas are the sentient beings' friends without invitation, because they volunteer to come out and help others. The three great vows in Buddhism, which are, sentient beings are numerous, I vow to save them all. Dharma gates or Dharma methods are numerous. Oh no, the second one, the first one is the vexations are infinite and numerous. For sentient beings are numerous, I vow to save them all. The second great vows, four great vows is vexations are numerous, I vow to cut them all. The third great vow is Dharma gates and approaches are infinite, I vow to master them all. And the last one is supreme Buddhahood, I vow to attain it. That's the four great vows of Mahayana Buddhism as a goal for all Bodhisattvas to achieve. As actually to save all sentient beings without any discrimination, without any condition. It is the other three great vows are only to accomplish this one. Because if one truly wants to save all sentient beings effectively, one we are bound to cut off one's vexations. And then one cut off one's vexations with the motivation in order to qualify oneself to save others. And not just cut off vexations to get out of samsara. And that compassion in self-cultivation, in saving others, are merely the result of great true compassion. That is the true Bodhisattva mind. However, nowadays, there are many Buddhists who only want the second, the third, and the fourth great vows, which is Dharma gates are numerous. They vow to master them all. So they learn all kinds of Dharma teachings and methods. Supreme Buddhahood are supreme and unsurpassing. And they too want to obtain the Buddhahood. But it's like the building a structure, a building, without the first and the second floor. You only want the third and the fourth floor. That is just impossible to attain there. And that's why so many Buddhist practice also knows a lot about the Buddhism's teachings and methods, but very few truly obtain the achievement. I'd like to point out my personal experience and share with you when I decided to follow my teacher, Mr. and Venerable Li Bingnan. He gave me three requirements or three conditions that I must accept for 5 years. Number one, I must only listen to him and follow his instructions and not follow anybody else's instructions. Number two, without his personal concurrence, I must not even look at other Buddhism books. Number three, everything I have learned so far are considered invalid and has to be forget and threw out of my mind. When I first heard these conditions, I was thinking, this is too strict. Oh, sounds like my teacher is a dictator. Then I just think about it. I said, okay, let me try. So I said, I will accept your requirement. For 5 years, I'll do what you told me and only what you told me. Then I realized in the practice during these 5 years, I realized the less I listen to other people, the less books I read of different teaching, the less vexation and confusion I have. And the more I can cut off, the more I don't listen to other people or reading other books, the more vexation got cut off. And also realize if I completely cut off, completely not listen to other people's teaching and reading other books, then I completely cut off vexations and confusion. Then I realize the requirement of my teacher. First one, listen only to the teacher for 5 years. It is to block my ear so I won't be confused by the noise or confused teaching from other people. Do not read any books without the concurrence of the teacher. It is to block my eyes without being hurting and confused by other books and teachings. And therefore, in that 5 years, actually, the first half year is past. I feel big difference, tremendous benefits, and vexations cut off drastically already. So, at the end of the 5 years, I volunteered myself to the teacher. I like to extend this condition, adherence of this condition to another 5 years. So I followed the teacher, accept his requirements and condition for a total of 10 years. And after that, my teacher told me I can go ahead and learn from all the other teachers. I can go ahead and read all books, even evil books. And you can only benefit at that time. No matter what kind of person tell you, no matter what kind of books you read, no matter how wrong they are, you benefit yourself because you know what is right. From that point on, you get more experience. It is like the children. You got to watch the kids very closely. It's not dictatorship of the parents. It is the great love to protect them from being contaminated from the environments. And that is great compassion of the parents. So I was very lucky. A student said, you are very lucky to have such a great teacher. And you benefit so much. We are not that lucky because we can't find such a teacher. It is true. To find a teacher of such great caliber and capacity, it is through your good karma and inconceivable karmic connections. You cannot really find a teacher that's so good and is in a physical form that you can see and learn on a daily basis. But if you cannot meet such a person in a physical form to help you, I advise you, which is also the method of my own teacher. He cannot find a teacher for himself. He simply follow the great teacher in the history book of Buddhism. You find one and decide you're going to follow that one. You read all his books. You put all his teaching into practice and only his teaching. My teacher said, do not follow Shu Dongpo, the great scholar and poet, famous in writing poem, and do not follow the modern scholar Yang Qichao, who is famous in literature. These two persons are famous in Chinese history for their profound knowledge, but they do not have cultivation. So do not follow them. Follow the great teacher. And he said very humbly, I am not qualified to be a teacher. Follow the 13th patriarch of Pure Land, the most venerable Yingguang Dashi. And from the history, we can find a similar example. You cannot find somebody physically available to you that you follow the great sage or holy people in the history book. Like Confucius followed Confucius. They are a couple hundred times between them. You cannot follow as a physical teacher. So Confucius spent all his lifetime studying Confucius books and put into practice and contemplate on all the teachings. For only one teacher, all his lifetime. And therefore, in the history, Confucius was considered the second highest sage in the Chinese history. And there are other examples too. In the Han Dynasty, a famous historian, Sima Qian, he followed Zhuo Qiuming, who wrote a famous historic book. And he studied and practiced only 左丘明style and philosophy, and therefore Sima Qian of the Han Dynasty becomes the great scholar and historian of the Han Dynasty. There's another example famous in Chinese history in the area of literature. Han Yu, who is one of the 8 greatest scholar and person in literature. He followed the author of 史记, the record book of Chinese history, who is the author is Sima Qian. He follows Sima Qian's all the articles, all the thinking, even the writing style of Sima Qian. And therefore, Han Yu became the great scholar of Tang Dynasty by following one teacher from history book. In Buddhism, another example I can give to you is in the Ming Dynasty, great master Ou Yi. He followed Lian Ci master and studied all his books and put into practice. And therefore, Venerable Ou Yi in Ming Dynasty became a great master that is famous in Chinese Mahayana Buddhism. If you follow one person with all your heart, then you can be considered as a descendant of this broken lineage, of this lineage. Therefore, my advice to all of you to follow a great person, a great being that's even greater than my teacher's advice to me, the Patriarch of Pure Land, Yingguang Dashi. My advice to you is follow the great teacher of all great teachers, Amitabha Buddha, as your teacher, and follow and read the Infinite Life Sutra for 5 years, and control yourself, not reading other books for 5 years, and practice Amitabha as your own deity, as your only ideal idol, if you want to use that word. And then you can become actually a manifestation of Amitabha. If you have choose all your goal into Amitabha and all study only Amitabha Sutra. In my personal experience, during 5 years, concentrated like apprenticeship, then you're going to cultivate and develop proper viewpoint corresponding to wisdom. Then when you read the sutra, your eyes can emitting light, the light of wisdom. With that developed, then come back and read all other books, interface and talk to all other teachers. You know right away the spiritual level of their spiritual achievement, and their realization of the Buddha's teaching. You know how deep at what level they are. And that is because you have opened up your mind. But if you study all the sutras and all the teachings and interface with all the teachers, you get all kinds, even confusing and conflicting information, then with that kind of attitude, for 300 years you studied, you're just getting more and more confused. And you read ancient Buddhism books, you would not be able to tell the spiritual level of that book. So when I discuss this one and share with another master who is also famous in Singapore, Venerable Yen Pei, after my lecture, Yen Pei asked me to go to a private room and said, that's exactly the strict conditions my teacher asked me to do. And his teacher is Di Xian, Venerable Di Xian, very famous. I only followed this instruction, which is strict requirement, for 2 years. Then I said to him, what a shame. If you follow him for 5 years, solely, your achievement will be much higher than what you are today. Because if we follow one teacher, that teacher introduced one method. We follow 2 teachers, introduce 2 methods. You follow 3, you get more teachings. You follow 4, you'll be in a crossroad. 4 which way to go? In the ancient time, the Buddhist disciples follow the teacher Some follow all their lifetime, 20, 30 years, pretty common. So this is about dedication in following one teacher or one teaching, and then you can have achievement a lot easier than exposed to all teachings with craving desire. The regular education talks about you should have more knowledge, more foundation. In Buddha Dharma, its education is to be able to, the purpose is to be able to understand all. But their methods are different. The regular education system want to help you establish a wide foundation, like building a pyramid. The wider you are, then you can go higher and higher, but then it's only to one single point. But Buddhism's education is totally different from regular education in that you need to concentrate on one and only one sutra. Only one sutra is completely and thoroughly realized. You go with deeply inside what is one sutra and only one sutra. And when you completely realize that, which means what? Enlightenment or realization. When you have realization, then come back and read or compare with other sutras, you have instant understanding without trouble. Therefore, Buddhism's education is like a tree starting from the root, one point or a seed. They grow higher and higher and then become wide and great perfect, and like the shape of the pyramid. Therefore, their methodology are totally different. Therefore, in the beginning, looks like regular worldly education sounds very impressive. All kinds of subjects, all kinds of knowledge, sounds very knowledgeable. But the more you learn, eventually you only reach a single point, a high level achievement, but that is only a single point. On the contrary to that approach, Buddha Dharma's education is starting very simple, maybe even boring, but with single mind, go deep, deep inside. When you fully realize the self-nature, then you read all sutras. You can master them without additional studies. So, the worldly people just cannot understand this kind of methodology and approach. But because difference of methodology, the achievement is drastically different. In the 40 flower adorned sutra, there are different types. One is 40 flower adorned sutra. A Bodhisattva by the name of Santai Tongzi, he first followed Manjushri Bodhisattva Mahasattva as teacher. From that teacher, he has accomplished precept, samadhi, and wisdom. With that kind of wisdom and spiritual achievement, the teacher let him go to visit 53 different types of teachers of that world. And these 53 different types of teachers, some are home living monks, most of them are lay persons. Some are older, some are younger. And the final teacher that he visits was universal goodness teacher, who taught him to make vow and to be born into the Buddha Amitabha's Pure Land. Only when one can go to Pure Land, then one can perfect one's Buddhahood. If one do not go to the Pure Land, then at most one can cut off all vexations, but not complete one's Bodhisattva and Supreme Buddhahood. This is my realization when I teach the Flower Adorned Sutra for many years. 17年了，我已经17年了，教了17年了。In 17 years, I teach the Flower Adorned Sutra. And then finally I realized in this sutra, it mentioned the highest Bodhisattva, Mahasattva, next to Buddha. They all want to go to Buddha Amitabha's place. They already stay in the spiritual realm called complete true Dhammatatu. If they already reached that level, why do they still want to go to Pure Land and visit the Buddha Amitabha? I have a great doubt in my mind. And after 70 years of teaching of the Flower Dome Sutra, I suddenly realized they went there in order to perfect their Buddhahood, in order to accomplish the Bodhisattva, and become a perfect Buddha. Therefore, if we can generate great mind and vows to be born in Pure Land, then we too can perfect our Bodhisattva and to obtain supreme Buddhahood. The second statement in the third virtue talks about to truly believe in the law of cause and effect. In my early study period of time, I have great doubt about this one, because the third virtue deals with the learning content of a Bodhisattva. If they put this one in the first virtue, for lay average people, I can understand it. But for great Bodhisattva, for they to practice, they still need to understand and deeply believe in this law of cause and effect. That makes me very puzzled. And then, when I study the Flower Dome Sutra, in the chapter of the 10-level Bodhisattva, I have a sudden realization. The 10 levels of Bodhisattva, not including, plus the additional level, which is one step just below Buddha, that altogether, 10 plus 1, 11 levels of great Bodhisattvas. They all practice Buddha method, Amitabha Buddha method. Then I realized in the third virtue that one should possess in truly believing in the law of cause and effect, is to believe the law, the cause of tainting Buddha, and the result of the effect is to be born in the Pure Land, to be perfect one's Buddhahood. Then I realized the purpose of this law of cause and effect is not just average law of cause and effect, but a special law of cause and effect. To believe in the Buddha, in the chanting of Amitabha method, and become like Amitabha Buddha, and thus perfect one's Buddhahood. To read and recite Mahayana Buddhism Sutras, of all Mahayana Buddhism Sutras, is the content of the third virtue. To read the sutra or recite the sutra is in order to learn and follow the example of Buddha and Bodhisattvas and put into practice. It is not just to read books back to the Buddha or Bodhisattva. As Buddha Bodhisattva teach you the books, the sutra, he does not need you to repeat it back to him. For Buddhists, when we practice, at least we should practice twice a day, once in the morning, once at night. The purpose of morning session is to remind us what we need to do for the rest of the day. And the evening session or evening homework is to provide opportunity for self-examination and for self-improvement. If we haven't done or reached what we're supposed to do as reminded in the morning session, then we need to repent and try our best for the next day. But if we only read and chant the sutra and do the homework twice, once in the morning, once at night, before Buddha statue made of wood or clay, and we don't even think about the meaning during our rest time of the day, then we are cheating the Buddha made of stone, clay, or wood. If we dare to cheat the Buddha twice a day, and then it's worse than cheating the real Buddha, because we don't even respect the wooden one. When the real one comes, our cheating will be worse than that. So how can we do that? We must not do this kind of thing. We must do the chanting and change our mind accordingly. Historically or traditionally, the Buddhists who practice Pure Land will do Amitabha Sutra once and 3 times of rebirth into Pure Land mantra 3 times. I have taught the Amitabha Sutra and explained in detail for only 3 times. Each time it takes 335 tapes to complete the teaching of Amitabha Sutra. So the teaching of Amitabha Sutra is very profound, very deep than average people can possibly conceive. Therefore, I like to advise you to chant the Infinite Life Sutra, which may be longer but simpler and easier to understand. If you do not have the time to chant that one, it takes about 2 hours. Then I advise you in the morning session, you chant only the chapter number 6 to practice and to learn how Buddha Amitabha generate his great vows, and you try to generate vows of the similar type. Then you become Buddha's friend, because you generate the same kind of vows, having the same kind of attitude towards sentient beings. At night time, if you don't have time to recite the whole sutra of infinite life, then my advice to you is to recite or chant only chapter 33 through 37, only 5 chapters, which basically talk about renunciate all evils and wrongdoings and practice only good things and deeds. At night time, if you do that, then you are actually practicing and examining your practice. And this is similar to chanting Buddha name and follow precepts. Therefore, in the morning, you can generate great vows just like the Buddha Amitabha. At night time, you can practice just the way the Buddha would do in daily life. Then your heart is similar to Buddha Amitabha's heart. Then you are bound to be born into the Pure Land. But if you only chant Buddha's name without changing your mind, even you can chant 1/10 of a million times or 100,000 times, but your mind has not into Buddha's heart, then even you lost your voice in doing so, it doesn't change your mind. It's still not useful. And today's people do not understand the true meaning and teaching of Amitabha Sutra. They only follow traditional approach of chanting the Amitabha Sutra, do not know the meaning, do not know how to put it into practice, do not examine one's behavior on a daily basis. Therefore, I advise everyone to recite or chant the Infinite Life Sutra and put your heart into it. And you can simplify that for one chapter in the morning and 5 chapters at night. So in the third virtue, it talks about to read and recite all Mahayana sutras. Then one can obtain the supreme benefits of the Buddha Dharma. But in actual implementation of this item of third virtue, one needs to pick up only one major sutra and concentrate to this one for at least 5 years. But modern people do not have the patience. So I will say, let's give a 60% shortcut. Let's say 3 years. Minimum 3 years You need to concentrate on one sutra, on only that one Mahayana sutra. I myself spent 10 years, but I spent 10 years for different period of time in that 10 years for 5 different sutras. What I have learned in that 10 years was the Theravada Sutra, which basically says, Alan asked teach Buddha Sakyamuni the good benefit, the benefits and potential disaster if one do not serve Buddha properly. That kind of sutra. Second one was Amitabha Sutra. The third one was Universal Bodhisattva's Great Vows and Activity chapter of the Flower Adorned Sutra, just one chapter. The third one was Diamond Sutra, the Emptiness Wisdom. And the last one was Surangama Sutra. These 5 sutras, the first are the Theravada Sutra, the rest 4 were Mahayana Sutra. And then I spent time listening to my teacher's teaching of the 80 Flower Dome Sutra for only the first row. I didn't hear the rest, but then I was able to understand the rest of all the sutras. Flower Dome Sutra, which is the most beautiful and large in volume of all Buddhism sutras. And then I was able to teach the Wonderful Flowers Sutra without learning from teacher before. And Kristigava Sutra without learning from teacher. Was able to even teach other people of Zen Buddhism related sutras, such as Sixth Patriarch Platform Sutra. That's because if one fully understands one sutra and get the essence of that teaching, then to read other sutras, you can easily understand their teachings also. If you only study one sutra and able to teach only that sutra, and then another sutra comes, you have to spend time and study that one, then you won't be able to master all the sutras. You haven't got the essence of the sutra or the essence of the truth. Even in Confucianism, Confucius would not teach students for one thing, and the student would not unable to figure out the rest. If Confucius will teach a student who can understand when teacher point out one corner, the student will be able to figure out or realize there are 3 other corners of the room. So my teacher said, listen to the sutra or teaching, not listen to the language or sound, but listen to the real meaning. If you can understand the truth from your teaching or listening, you are the best type. If you cannot understand the true essence and meaning of the sutra, but you can understand the key points of that particular sutra, that's also good, but not the best. And to be able to penetrate through the spirits, the ultimate truth of the teaching for any sutra, is because of the wisdom. Without that, it's impossible. And to obtain wisdom of capable to penetrate through the sutra teaching, it comes from samadhi. And samadhi comes from precept. And in this practice of penetrating through the sutra, that precept is patience. Great patience, so that you will not look around to see other sutra, look around to listen to other teaching, but be patient to one sutra, one teaching. And then you're going to have concentration capability. And then you're going to have realization wisdom. And then with that, you listen to the sutra, you see the ultimate meaning out of the teaching. And then with that kind of realization or wisdom, when you open up any other sutra, you understand immediately. The last statement in the third virtue is to help other beings, other practitioners, to diligently practice Buddha Dharma and marching on the enlightenment path. So this statement in the third virtue is the only statement talk about interface with others and benefit others. The rest are pretty much requirements for oneself. So, in summary, starting from the beginning of be filial to your own parents until the last one to help other beings marching toward Buddhahood. Then if you can do all this, 3 types of virtues, then you can be considered as truly a good man or good woman, as mentioned in the Krishtagarbha Sutra. And then you can realize it is not exaggerated. When you are good in such a level, possess all 3 types of virtues, you can be born 100 times, and every lifetime in the 33rd heaven, high level heaven, for 100 lifetimes. Because you possess this kind of greatness, 3 virtues completely possessed, then the result to be born into the 33 level heaven for 100 lifetimes is not exaggerated. So these 3 types of virtues, as mentioned in the Observing Infinite Life Sutra, is the foundation to be born in all Buddha's Pure Land. Without that, it's not easy to be born into heavenly level. So I wish everyone will study more about the 3 virtues and contemplate about the meaning of the 3 virtues and try your best to put into practice, and therefore establish cultivation basis for oneself, for one's own cultivation. And tomorrow we're going to talk about something also is a foundation, but it's a foundation for group practice, which contains 6 types of harmonies. Without the understanding of tomorrow's teaching, the proper foundation of group practice, then when people get together, the minds are scattered and idle talks between people, sometimes even causing disharmony and problems.